And for one question, I'm making the rounds to all the speakers. The question here was whether it's possible to identify the larger root cause of the current crisis and violence in Manipur, moving beyond the immediate binaries in terms of claims and counterclaims by communities in Manipur. So the three speakers have responded. Now I'm posing the same question to you.
Okay, let me put you, how much time do I have? According to, I have to cut down some and then pick and choose the person.
Mostly 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes.
You know why I'm saying is that there are so many distortions and lack of information is supplemented by deliberate distortions of facts and figures over the years. And since the starting of this conflict or violence, things have got more nasty. It's almost like what, Hitler's propaganda minister Goebbels had said, you tell a big lie and repeat it 100 and 1,000 times, it becomes a truth. So it becomes very difficult to put, and especially for the mainstream India, because you barely know about what Northeast is. So let me start with the very locations and let's go step by step. If I spill over 2-3 minutes, I hope you will allow, because this should help us not only about this present crisis, but larger understanding of the dynamics in the Northeast and its relationship with India. Let's start with this. In just after what we call the Sepoy Mutiny, or the first war of independence in the middle of the 19th century, the territory that we call the Republic of India today was broadly divided into two territories with two different kinds of sovereign power being exercised. The one is called British India, which was under the direct administrative control of the sovereign king in England. And there is another group of territories which are called the native state, the Indian state, or the princely state. These are the three terms used, where the sovereign power was raised with the Nawabs, the kings, and so on. And this was clearly laid out in the November Declaration in 1958 by Queen Victoria. And these states were under what is being called the paramount power of the British king. But they are, in that sense, is a sovereign power is not exercised on the people. That the difference between the people in British India and people in those princely states. Among those 600 princely states, there were roughly around, I don't remember, it is barely around 100 of them. I have the exact list though. I don't remember it. Were called the gun salute states. They have a meaning when the ruler of these states come to New Delhi to meet the viceroy or so on, there will be firing guns in honor of those ruling princes, or what the British call it princes. There is a reason why British call it princes, because they think that there can be only one king and the rest of the rulers in India are nothing but princes and so on. So Hyderabad and the Kashmir were the largest gun salute state with 21 guns. Manipur was a princely state with 11 gun salute. The lowest is the 3 gun salutes. Manipur was an 11 gun salute state. Out of the 600, these 100 odd princely states were listed because when the Chamber of Princes were formed and inaugurated in 1921, they were confused whether we can give the same status to all the 600 odd kingdoms or only a few to be selected. That's why the gun salute state was used as a framework. So this particular state, like all of the princely state, was asked to join either the Dominion of Pakistan or Dominion of India in 1947 through what is called Instrument of Accession. And that is how Manipur comes into the Indian Union as a republic. They signed the Instrument of Accession, followed by a controversial agreement, which is called the Merger Agreement. One must distinguish between the Instrument of Accession and the Merger Agreement. Because under the Instrument of Accession, the power that the federal government holds is communications, defense, and foreign affairs. The rest of them were with the ruling ruler of each state. That was how then the merger was signed. It was extracted from the king by coercion in Shillong and on 21st September 1949, and it was implemented on the 15th of October of 1949 itself. Now, this is very crucial for us to understand what Manipur is. And I've given you the background of the Indian state and how Manipur is part of that one. Now, this 15th of October 1949, Manipur became, or this merger agreement was implemented and the state assembly was dissolved. The speaker of whom that state assembly was a Paite guy called Tiangkham from Churchanpur. He was a speaker of that house. He pleaded that, the merger is illegal and assembly must discuss before joining and so on. And there were Kuki chiefs who were also protested this forced merger in 1949. So that was a state. And this is the turning point. One must recognize whether Manipur state is an entity or not. And if you look at the 19th entry in the Constitution of India, Schedule 1, Manipur is defined as the territory which immediately before the commencement of this constitution was being administered as if it were a chief commissioner's province under the name Manipur. That's the definition of Manipur in today's Indian constitution. It says that it was a commissioner's province, the territory. And that is the hint. That particular chief commissioner's province was created when the merger agreement, which was a controversial agreement, was implemented on 15 October. In the morning, there was a notification that the power has been taken over from the state government, over responsible government, elected government, and the king as a monarch, constitutional monarch, was dissolved. And the chief commissioners took over the administration of Manipur from the 15th of October, 1949. And that is the Manipur you have. And so a lot of myth have been created when this was signed, only the 700,000, only the valley was signed by the king. That's a myth. You can check it on this Constitution of India, how the territory is defined, how the chief commissioner, which is mentioned in the Indian Constitution, is the chief commissioner, which was implemented by the Dominion government on 15th of October, 1949. So let's keep this one. Now, that's Manipur, simple one. So what's happening? There is a history, you can go back. This is what, Foucault will call it when you analyze the present, it casts a shadow in the past. So you need to go back, and the past is something that implicated in the present. That's a dichotomy between what we call it hill and valley. And this is a topographical mistake. And the division among people, I have already laid out in my Hindu article, you can cross-check it. You must remember that on the formation of the continents on Earth, while Himalayan region is a earthquake-prone area, and all those things can be laid out in scientific terms. There is nothing illogical or untruth about this, how these regions were formed. So the Manipur that you know is a mountainous part of that elevation through that continental formations. And Brahmaputra Valley and the Indo-Gangetic Valley were part of the depression which was created in that one. Later on through the sedimentation, it becomes a plain. Now what happened is that when the British came to this part of the world, under Assam, which they took over in 1826. And the kind of scheme that they distinguished between the Naga Hills and the Lusai Hills from the Brahmaputra Valley was mistakenly applied. But they did not apply it, though the perspective was applied, they did not use it. That is why Meitei could settle in the hills, and the so-called hill people will settle in the valley. That was not disturbed. When the British took over Manipur, as effectively they have taken over, the de jure, they did not take over, because by that time, since Queen Victoria's proclamation, she has said that none of this princely state will be integrated or annexed into British India. That's why after 1891 war, Manipur was kept separate, but de facto they have interfered. They formed the government. They appointed a new Maharaja from a different lineage of the royal family and so on. Now, when they introduced the 1907, the management rule of the state of Manipur, it is under that particular rule that the hills and valley were divided not geographically, but in terms of what they call people. So they call it hillsmen and those hill tribes. This is the word they use. That is why they think that the valley were the plain tribes, like in Assam. That's the assumption they have it. That's why they listed Meitei as one of the tribe and the hill tribe as something else. They were governed by different criminal and jurisprudence rule under that management rule of 1907. They modified it, slowly. The last one was in 1935, after the India Act of 1935 comes. Even when you look into that act, you will see Manipur is defined as that state, the territory that lies between British India and the Burma. That's how Manipur was defined in that act. So it was a separate entity. You must understand this one. So this division of the mistaken division is something that you must keep in mind when the Brahmaputra Valley is roughly around 50 meters. Naga Hills, Kohima and others were 1,445 and Aizawl is something like 1,150s. That's a huge difference, 30 times falls. But when you look at Ukhrul, it is only hardly double the height of the Imphal, and Churchanpur is barely 130. If you look from the geological and geographical part, Churchanpur is part of the southern end of the Oval Valley in Manipur. You will see this in geography. You ask whether it is a Kuki geologist or a American geologist or a Bengali geologist or any geologist who wrote the term and see whether Churchanpur Kangpokpi is part of the Oval Valley of this mountainous region created through that collision 50 million years ago. This will be beyond the propagandist idea. Go to any university department of geology or Geological Survey of India and you check out with yourself. So that is the misnomer between hill and valley divide. And they have divided in terms of the people as hill tribes. And they were in the Foucaultian sense, they have created two sets of subjects governed by two different laws within deriving from the same law, management of Manipur state. And that was implemented by the post-colonial state as scheduled tribe and non-scheduled tribe. So this division is continued. Not only that, the post-colonial state did something worse than the British. What is movable? Don't talk about buying land. It was British who introduced the notion of private property. All the land belongs to the king. None of the Manipuri Meitei subjects also own land. It was king's property. It was British who introduced this sense of ownership. You check into the detail of this history beyond these propagandists and this communal harangue that you've been hearing, and then so-called liberals and progressive elements have been partaking in this as a part of the conflict, rather than playing a mediating role to cool down the situations. They blame game, they are joining and releasing press conferences, embarrassing twisted facts, which will come out, and their credential as academics in Indian university or Western university, they will be laughed at. Keep this thing in mind. So this is the root cause. So mistrust has been created, and we have been looking at each other. Meiteis look at these people with suspicion. And because of the cultural intervention, yes, there is also a way of looking in hierarchical sense. Meitei think themselves as advanced and civilized. They look down upon the tribes within quotes. And similarly, mind you, within the elite tribes and major tribes, they will also look down on the minority tribes. And that's the dynamics that has been going on. And since, because of things, even though they are given in these territorial small compact areas, instead of working for a common good, there is no notion of a common good. Just as since 1956 onwards and 71, the rest of the country was organized in linguistic terms. You all know this history, how the Northeast is not designed on the basis of linguistic category, but largely in terms of ethnic category. That was the ethnicization of politics in the Northeast in the state formation. And the Manipur has been following. All these categories have been internalized both by the scholars, by common people, and they don't realize that they have a common destiny together in the light of this neoliberal economic onslaught and the Indo-China strategic moves. United States, Israel, and India on one side, and the Chinese containment policy, North has always been looked at in a strategic lens. We are subjects through this lens. Without realizing this, or the onslaught of this neoliberal economy, they think that Meiteis are going to extract wealth from Churchanpur have been fighting against this neoliberal. Ask anybody, you will find out who were fighting against these global forces of the capitals. Now they are saying that Meiteis are going to extract. How? Do they have the money? Do they have the company to run? You check this. These are the propaganda going on. And the Indian state strategy is to use various identity groups as part of their counter-insurgency measures. Remember, all these dynamics is why this violence has not stopped. Indian army or Indian state could have stopped it if they want. And instead of looking at this larger pictures, Meiteis have been killing and these things have been, cookies have been killing. That is how the situation is. You ask yourself, why is the Prime Minister stopped speaking? Incidentally, who started asking about Prime Minister being stopped or speaking roughly against the RSS and the BJP? You will find it comes from the Meiteis. And you listen to the last 1 month television discussion on all of them, pointing finger as a Meitei as the beginner. Meitei has been the language. You listen to any other Meitei's intervention, you will have the voice of saying that, why did the violence allowed in Imphal, including me? Right from the ran in to stop the violence in Imphal. Even it was provoked. Blaming Meitei game.
Ask
Look
that
at
to Mr. N. Biren Singh, Chief Minister.
Listen how many articles have been written by the Meiteis in the national media and how many of them have been written by this tribe. Some of these people in the mainstream, instead of playing to cool down and douse the flame, you are playing on this game. Remember that the losers will be the cookies and the Meiteis, whether you like it or not. Even if you have these separations, this kind of a bloody things will linger on for 100 years. When you think about Churchanpur people catching flight from Aijol, instead of traveling for 50 kilometers to Imphal, that they are traveling for almost 350 kilometers away. And like the Bangladesh and Pakistan was created, you have a Kangpopi tek between the Nagas territories and the Meitei areas, and one far away from it, the strategic locations, what the Indian government is doing, all of these things. If you don't think, you will be the sufferer. You, Mane, the people of that part of the state. None will suffer. The stories of killings and violence and uprooted, it will be told 100 times by the people of that state, whichever community is. You must realize that at the end of the day, do you want to sustain this kind of a conflictual relationship or try to find a common ground in the days to come? That should be left to the intelligence of these people, whether it is the Meiteis or the Kukis or whichever tribes. Remember that this particular conflict has something to do with the contestations among the political class themselves. Churchanpur was not given any place in. You must also look at these political dynamics between individual politicians and how it spill over into the larger game plans. And my only fear is this: people, ordinary citizens suffer, dislocated with a promise of a lingering conflict. Nobody is going to win in from that part of the world. Some of us who are here in the metropolitan area, we need to choose. Our life may not be affected. People are not getting jobs. They don't have a cloth to eat. You think that this is going to linger on like this? Already, I've seen what happened in the ground. Ordinary people suffer. I am telling it again, people suffer. And next year you will have a famine, then you will be dependent all because agricultural work has been stopped. And this will create another dependence on Delhi's help. All these things. Stop this madness for a while and think and talk it out.
Professor Akoijam, Professor
That
Akoijam,
is the message. I'm coming here to give you this message. Race, you want to fight it on, you want to blame the Meiteis, or you want to blame the cookies, go on. And think what consequences you are bringing to your own people and your own lives. That's my message to all of you.